The day his fiancée called me screaming about a tattoo, I knew our 3-year secret was over. My name was permanently inked on his chest, right above his heart. But I wasn't the woman wearing his ring. I was the one he loved in the shadows. If you've ever been someone's secret, or wondered what it feels like to love someone who can't choose you publicly, this story will hit deep. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because these real-life stories don't get told enough. Let's dive in. My name is Naya, and I'm about to tell you the most painful truth of my life. 3 years ago, I thought I knew what love looked like. I thought I understood the difference between being chosen and being convenient. I was wrong about everything. It started on a Tuesday morning at this little coffee shop downtown where I'd go before work. I was scrolling through emails half awake when this man walked in. Tall, confident, with this smile that seemed to light up the entire room. He ordered his coffee, black, no sugar, and when he turned around, our eyes met. Just for a second, but sometimes a second is all it takes to change your entire life. James, that's what he told me his name was when he approached my table. He was an architect, 32, with hands that moved when he talked, and this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the world. We talked for an hour about everything and nothing. Art, travel, dreams we'd put on hold, the way the city looked different when you really paid attention to it. When I had to leave for work, he asked for my number. But there was this hesitation in his voice, this split second where he seemed to be fighting with himself. I should have paid attention to that hesitation. I should have asked more questions right then and there. But his smile was so warm, and I hadn't felt that kind of connection in years. So I gave him my number, and he promised he'd call. He did call, that same night. Actually, we talked until 2 in the morning about childhood memories and favorite movies. His voice was deep and soothing, the kind that made you want to curl up and listen forever. We went on our first date that weekend, dinner at this quiet restaurant across town. Not downtown where we met, not anywhere near my neighborhood, somewhere distant, anonymous. The conversation flowed like we'd known each other for years. Told me about his work, designing buildings that would outlast us both. I told him about my marketing consulting business, the clients who drove me crazy, the campaigns I was proud of. He listened, really listened, asking questions that showed he cared about the details of my life. When he walked me to my car, he kissed me softly, his hand gentle on my cheek. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful, but even then, there were signs, little things that didn't quite add up. He never wanted to take pictures together. When I suggested we go to this new restaurant everyone was talking about, he'd counter with somewhere quieter, more private. He was sweet, attentive, but there was always this invisible wall between us and the rest of the world. 3 months in, I started noticing the patterns. We only met at my apartment or his place. Never anywhere public where we might run into people he knew. His phone was always face down when we were together. He'd step outside to take certain calls, claiming it was work stuff. When I asked about meeting his friends, he'd change the subject or make some excuse about timing. I remember the night I brought up social media. I'd posted a picture of us at my place, just our hands holding coffee mugs, nothing revealing. But he saw it and asked me to take it down. Said he was a private person, didn't like his business out there for everyone to see. I deleted the post, but something in my chest felt tight, like I was being erased before I'd even been acknowledged. The truth came out on a random Thursday evening. I was at dinner with my friend Keisha when she casually mentioned seeing James at the grocery store with his girlfriend. Long-term girlfriend. Keisha had no idea we were dating. She was just making conversation. But those words hit me like a physical blow. Girlfriend, long-term. While I was at home planning what to cook for him the next time he came over, I confronted him that night. Showed up at his apartment unannounced, which I'd never done before. He opened the door, and I could see the panic in his eyes before he even knew why I was there. I told him what I'd heard, watched his face confirm everything I was afraid to believe. He didn't deny it. Instead, he invited me in, sat me down on his couch, and told me they were on a break. That he'd been meaning to tell me, but the timing was never right. That what we had was real, but the situation was complicated. He said he was going to end things with her, that he just needed time to figure out how to do it without destroying her. She'd been in his life for years, he said. It was messy. I should have walked away. Every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to get up, leave, and never look back. But the way he looked at me when he said I was the one he wanted to be with, the way his voice cracked when he talked about losing me, I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him so badly that I convinced myself it was true. He promised me he would end things with her. He promised me that in a few months, we'd be together for real. No more hiding, no more secrets. He took my hands in his and looked into my eyes and swore that I was worth fighting for, that I was worth choosing. So I stayed, and that decision changed everything. Becoming the other woman wasn't a choice I made consciously. It was a series of small compromises, tiny justifications, little lies I told myself until I was so deep in the shadows that I couldn't remember what the light looked like. At first, I convinced myself it was temporary. Just a few months while he figured out how to untangle himself from a relationship that was already over. I told myself that love was complicated, that sometimes good people found themselves in impossible situations. I told myself that what we had was special enough to wait for. But months turned into a year, and nothing changed except how good I got at living half a life. Our relationship existed in the spaces between his real world, weeknight dinners at my place when he said he was working late, weekend mornings when she was out of town, stolen phone calls during his lunch breaks. I learned to love in whispers, to laugh quietly, to exist in the margins of someone else's story. The hardest part wasn't the secrecy itself. It was the way it made me feel about myself, like I was something to be hidden, something shameful. I'd catch myself in the mirror sometimes and wonder when I'd become the kind of woman who accepted crumbs and called them a feast. When I'd started believing that partial love was better than no love at all. He was good at making me feel special during our time together. He'd bring me flowers, cook dinner, tell me about his day like I was the person he came home to. He remembered little things, like how I liked my coffee or the way I got anxious before big presentations. In those moments, in the bubble of my apartment or his, it felt real. It felt like we were building something together. But reality has a way of crashing through even the strongest delusions. I found out about the engagement the way you find out about most things in the age of social media, through a mutual friend's congratulations post. There was James, down on one knee in some beautiful garden, slipping a ring onto the finger of a woman I'd never seen but somehow hated instantly. The caption read something about soulmates and forever love, and I stared at that screen until my eyes burned. The woman's name was Lauren. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women are, with long blonde hair and a smile that looked like it had never been touched by doubt. In the pictures, she looked at James like he hung the moon, and he looked at her like she was his whole world, not the conflicted, guilty expression I'd grown used to. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. I called him that night, crying so hard I could barely speak. He came over immediately, and I've never seen anyone look so torn apart. He sat on my couch, head in his hands, and told me he was sorry, that he'd been trying to end things but couldn't find the right moment, that the engagement was a mistake, done in a moment of pressure and confusion. I don't love her the way I love you, he said. And I wanted to believe him so desperately that I almost did. He told me he was going to call off the engagement, that he just needed a little more time to figure out how to do it without destroying everyone's lives. Her family had already started planning, he said. Deposits had been made, people were excited. It was complicated. Everything was always complicated with James. But then he did something that changed everything. 6 months after the engagement, he came to my apartment with bandages on his chest. He'd gotten a tattoo, he said. My name, right above his heart, Naya, in elegant script letters, permanent and beautiful and impossible to hide. This is how I feel about you, he said, peeling back the bandage to show me. This is how much you mean to me. She's wearing my ring, but you're written on my heart. I traced the letters with my finger, and for the first time in over a year, I felt chosen, not hidden, not temporary, permanent. The relief was so overwhelming, I started crying right there, and he held me while I sobbed against his chest, careful not to disturb the fresh ink. That tattoo became my anchor. When the doubt crept in, when I questioned what I was doing with my life, I'd remember those letters carved into his skin. You don't tattoo someone's name on your body unless you mean it. You don't make that kind of commitment to someone you're just passing time with. So I stayed. Through the wedding planning, he'd tell me about the stress of maintaining 2 separate lives, the guilt that was eating both of us alive. I stayed because I thought permanent ink meant permanent love, But here's what I learned about secrets. They don't stay buried forever. They have a way of clawing their way to the surface, usually when you least expect it and in the most devastating way possible. The wedding was supposed to be in the fall. James would come to my place after meeting with caterers or florists, and we'd sit on my couch while he told me about centerpieces and seating charts for a celebration that felt like a funeral to me. He'd hold me afterward, promising it didn't mean anything, that it was just something he had to get through. I started therapy around this time, though I never told my therapist the whole truth. I said I was struggling with self-worth, with feeling like I wasn't good enough, with accepting less than I deserve. She'd ask me about my relationships, and I'd talk around the edges of the truth, never quite admitting that I was in love with someone who was engaged to someone else. The sessions helped, but not in the way I expected. Instead of making me feel better about the situation, they made me realize how far I'd drifted from the person I used to be, the woman who'd built her own business, who'd traveled solo through Europe, who'd never settled for anything less than what she deserved. Where had she gone? When had I replaced her with this version of myself who lived for stolen moments and secret promises? But every time I got close to walking away, James would do something that pulled me back in. He'd show up at my door with tears in his eyes, talking about how empty his life felt without me. He'd trace the tattoo on his chest and remind me that I was the one permanently etched into his skin. He'd make love to me like I was the only woman in the world, and for those moments, I'd forget about everything else. The weeks leading up to the wedding were the worst. James was distant, stressed, barely able to look at me without this expression of pure agony. I could see the guilt destroying him, but I also knew he wasn't going to choose me. Not really. The wedding was 2 months away, then 6 weeks, then a month. He kept saying he was going to call it off, but the date kept getting closer. I started having dreams about the wedding, about sitting in the back row, watching the man I loved promise his life to someone else, about standing up during the speak, now or forever hold your peace moment, about everyone turning to stare at the other woman who'd been hiding in the shadows. I'd wake up in cold sweats, my heart pounding, wondering if I'd really become the kind of person who could ruin someone's wedding day. 3 weeks before the wedding, James came to my apartment and told me he couldn't do it anymore. Not the engagement, not the wedding, but us. He said the guilt was killing him, that he couldn't keep living this double life. He said he loved me, but he couldn't keep hurting everyone involved. I begged him to reconsider. I reminded him of the tattoo, of everything we'd built together, of the promises he'd made. But he just shook his head and said he was sorry, that he'd made too many promises to too many people and he couldn't keep them all. He left that night, and I didn't hear from him for a week, the longest week of my life. I kept checking my phone, expecting him to call and say he'd changed his mind, that he'd realized what we had was too important to throw away. But the call never came. Instead, a different call came, one that would change everything. The phone rang on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after James had walked out of my life. I was still in bed, trying to find the energy to face another day without him, when an unknown number flashed on my screen. I almost didn't answer. These days, I barely had the strength for conversations with people I knew, let alone strangers, but something made me pick up. "Is this Nia?" The voice was sharp, furious, shaking with rage. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Lauren, James's fiancée, and we need to talk." The world tilted. My mouth went dry. In 3 years of being the other woman, I'd never spoken to her. She'd been this abstract concept, a name attached to social media posts, a shadow in the background of my guilt. But now, she was real, and she was angry, and she knew about me. "I don't know what you're talking about," I managed, but my voice betrayed me. "Don't you dare lie to me. I found your name tattooed on his chest." Tattooed. Do you understand what that means? It means, while he was planning our wedding, while he was promising to love me forever, he was getting another woman's name permanently inked on his body. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The tattoo that had been my proof of his love had become the evidence of my betrayal. "How long?" she demanded. "How long have you been sleeping with my fiancé?" The truth tumbled out before I could stop it. 3 years. The coffee shop, the promises, the secrets, all of it. And with every word, I could hear her world crumbling through the phone. When I finished, there was silence. Then, quietly, she said, "I want to meet you, face to face. You owe me that much." We met at a park downtown, neutral territory where neither of us had memories with him. I spotted her immediately, sitting on a bench, still wearing her engagement ring. She was even more beautiful in person, but her eyes were red from crying, and there was a hardness to her that hadn't been there in the social media photos. I sat down beside her, and for a moment, we just looked at each other, two women who'd been loving the same man in completely different ways. "Tell me about the tattoo," she said finally. So I did. I told her how he'd gotten it 6 months after their engagement, how he'd said it proved I was the one written on his heart, how I'd believed it meant he'd chosen me, even if he couldn't admit it publicly yet. She laughed, but it was bitter, broken. He told me it was a mistake, said he was drunk, that it was some random girl's name from years ago. He promised he'd get it removed after the wedding. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Even the tattoo, my anchor, my proof of his love, had been a lie, or maybe not a lie, but something he was willing to erase, to laser away like our entire relationship had never happened. I loved him, I whispered, and I hated how pathetic I sounded. So did I, she said. I was planning to spend my life with him. We had a house picked out, names for our kids, a whole future planned, and the entire time, he was with you. We sat in silence for a while, two women destroyed by the same man's inability to choose. Finally, she turned to me. "Did you know about me from the beginning?" I wanted to lie, to make myself look better, but she deserved the truth. "I found out 3 months in. He said you were on a break, that he was going to end things. He kept saying he needed more time." 3 years, she said. "You gave him 3 years to choose you, and he never did." The simplicity of it was devastating. 3 years of my life, 3 years of believing in someday, and he'd never chosen me. Not really. When it came down to it, when he had to pick between his comfortable life and his secret love, he'd picked comfort. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I'm calling off the wedding. I can't marry someone who's been living a double life for 3 years. I can't marry someone who has another woman's name tattooed on his body." She twisted the engagement ring on her finger. "What about you?" "I don't know. He ended things with me a week ago, said he couldn't do it anymore." She looked at me with something that might have been pity. "He didn't choose you either, did he?" And that's when it hit me. The full weight of what I'd done to myself, to her, to all of us. James hadn't chosen anyone. He'd chosen comfort, convenience, the path of least resistance. He'd kept me in the shadows and her in the light, and when the pressure became too much, he'd tried to disappear from both of our lives. But secrets don't stay buried. The tattoo had been his downfall, the permanent mark of his betrayal literally written on his skin. He'd tried to have it all, and in the end, he'd lost everything. Lauren stood up to leave, but before she walked away, she turned back to me. "I'm not angry at you," she said. "I'm angry at him. He's the one who made promises to both of us. He's the one who chose to live a lie. But I need you to know something. You deserve better than being someone's secret. You deserve someone who chooses you first, not someone who keeps you hidden." She walked away, leaving me alone on that bench. Finally seeing the truth clearly for the first time in 3 years, James called me that night, frantic, desperate. Lauren had confronted him about the tattoo, about me, about everything. The wedding was off. His life was in ruins. He wanted to see me, to talk, to figure out what came next. I listened to his voice, the same voice that had whispered promises in my ear for 3 years, and felt ... nothing. No anger, no love. No desire to comfort him or take him back, just emptiness where all that desperate longing used to be. "I'm getting the tattoo removed," he said, like that would fix everything. "Good," I replied. "You should." He seemed surprised by my response. Maybe he expected me to fight for him, to see this as our chance to finally be together. But I was done fighting for someone who had never fought for me. "Nia, I know I messed up, but maybe now we can." "No," I said. And the word felt like freedom. "We can't. You had 3 years to choose me, James. 3 years to decide if I was worth the risk, worth the difficult conversations, worth changing your life for. And you never did. You kept me as your secret, while you built a life with someone else. But I love you," he said, and I could hear the desperation in his voice. "Maybe you do," I said. "But love isn't enough when it comes with shame. Love isn't enough when it asks you to hide who you are. Love isn't enough when it keeps you in the shadows." I hung up the phone and blocked his number. Then I sat in my apartment, in the space where we'd shared so many stolen moments, and cried for the woman I'd been before I met him, the woman who knew her worth, who demanded to be chosen, who wouldn't accept love that came with conditions. The healing wasn't immediate. It took months of therapy, of rebuilding my sense of self, of learning to love myself enough to never accept being someone's secret again. I had to face the ways I'd betrayed myself, the compromises I'd made, the person I'd become in the name of love. But slowly, I found her again, the woman who'd built her own business, who traveled alone, who knew that she deserved to be someone's first choice, not their hidden option. I started dating again, but this time, I was different. I asked the hard questions early. I demanded transparency. I refused to be anyone's secret. Looking back now, I can see that the tattoo was never about love. It was about ownership, about marking territory, about having a piece of me that belonged to him, even when he couldn't claim me publicly. Real love doesn't hide in the shadows. Real love doesn't ask you to be half a person. Real love chooses you, openly, proudly, without hesitation. If you're listening to this and you're someone's secret, I want you to know something. You deserve more. You deserve someone who's proud to be with you, who wants the whole world to know how lucky they are to have you. You deserve someone who chooses you first, not someone who keeps you as a backup plan. The shadows are no place for love to live. And you, beautiful soul, were meant for the light. I want to look you in the eyes right now, even though I can't see you, and tell you something that took me 3 years to learn. You are not too much. You are not asking for too much. You are not being dramatic when you want to be chosen openly, proudly, without apology. If you're watching this and you're someone's secret right now, I know how you're feeling. I know that desperate hope that maybe tomorrow will be different. I know how you justify the crumbs they give you, how you convince yourself that hidden love is better than no love at all. I know because I lived it, breathed it, nearly drowned in it. But here's what I wish someone had told me 3 years ago. Love that requires you to shrink yourself, to hide, to accept less than you deserve, isn't love at all. It's convenience wearing love's mask. And you, beautiful soul, were never meant to be anyone's convenience. The woman who subscribed to this channel, who clicked on this video, who listened to my story for 25 minutes, that woman has a heart big enough to love deeply. Don't let anyone tell you that heart is too much. Don't let anyone convince you to make it smaller to fit into their comfortable lies. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Your heart matters. And if my story helped you see that, then every painful moment I lived through was worth it. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe because there are more stories like this that need to be told. And drop a comment below. Tell me where you are in your journey. Are you in the shadows? Are you stepping into the light? Are you choosing yourself for the first time? I read every single comment, and I want you to know that your story, whatever it is, matters to me. We're not just strangers watching videos, we're souls recognizing souls. And sometimes, that recognition is what saves us. Until next time, remember this: you were born to be someone's first choice, not their secret option. Choose yourself first, always. The light is waiting for you.